Dear former classmates and batchmates, Ms. Violeta Labang, Principal, Ms. Marlene Salao, Faculty President, teachers and members of the faculty and administration of Felipe G. Calderon Elementary School, family and friends. I am both honored and humbled to have been given the opportunity to address you tonight as part of the grand alumni homecoming event this year as hosted by our batch, the FG Calderon Elementary School batch of 1972. It feels like just several days ago when sometime in April or May of 1966, my late father brought me to the FG Calderon Elementary School campus in Tondo, Manila to have me registered as a first grader to start my official schooling. I remember being interviewed intently by a couple of elderly teachers and then being checked by the school dentist by the name of Miss Banzon and then by the school doctor by the name of Dr. De La Merced. I was assigned to the grade 1 section 1 class of Mrs. Josefina E. Siapuatco. When I got home, my oldest aunt, upon finding out who my teacher would be, told me that I would be in very good hands because she knew Mrs. Siapuatco, as Mrs. Siapuatco was also the teacher of her youngest daughter, Benita, some 11 years prior, in 1955. Mrs. Siapuatco, or Josie, as she was called by her co-teachers, was an excellent teacher. She taught us reading and writing in Tagalog, the basics of arithmetic, and so on. I remember her teaching us about sets and subsets, and note that this was in the first grade. Our principal then was Mr. George Signey, who I believe to be an American. I also remember a supervisor from the Division of City Schools, who I believe was a Caucasian woman. Mrs. Yapuatco and her Section 2 co-teacher, Mrs. Salita, used to call her Puti. Our classroom then was right beside the principal's office, which had a large window facing our classroom. So whenever Mrs. Yapuatco spotted the supervisor in Mr. Signey's office, she would run to Mrs. Salita in the adjoining classroom and tell her, si Puti, nandyan si Puti. They would then both get nervous and jumpy and would immediately start reviewing their lesson plans for the day. As 7-year-old kids, we all found this to be hilarious. Then came second grade. I was assigned to the grade 2 section 1 class of Mrs. Rosa Cruz, a very strict disciplinarian. She taught us how to read children's stories in Tagalog, further skills in arithmetic, and perhaps most importantly, she introduced us to the English language. For some reason, I suddenly became talkative when I was in grade 2, and Mrs. Cruz would often catch me talking to my seatmate while she taught. This would get her really mad at me, and she would order me to stand at the back of the classroom for an hour. Third grade under Mrs. Lagrimas Vanguardia was a very important stage for me because I believed that I had a cognitive spurt during this time. Mrs. Vanguardia was a very inspiring and highly motivating teacher, and I did learn a whole lot from her. Mrs. Vanguardia taught us the basics of English grammar, such as nouns, pronouns, and adjectives, verbs, adverbs, and so on. She also taught us health and science, basic math, such as decimals and fractions, and social studies. In our social studies class, she would have us memorize the then 15 districts of Manila, draw them on a map, separated into North and South districts by the Pasig River. She also had us memorize the 6 bridges that traverse the Pasig River, connecting the North and South districts. Thus, everyone in our class knew the geographic details of Manila at the time. Her son, Roy, was in our class too. I thank you, Mrs. Vanguardia in heaven. We owe you a great debt of gratitude for all the important things you taught us that we cannot possibly repay. In third grade, I also remember Miss Flores, the Section 3 teacher, teaching us Philippine folk dances, which we would dance on stage during school programs and various special occasions. Those dancing days was really fun Then came fourth grade. For the first time, we had more than one teacher, a teacher advisor and a second teacher. Our teacher advisor was Miss Purificacion Canoy, a strict Batangueña, who taught us English, social studies, and Philippine geography, among others. As part of our social studies class, Miss Canoy took us on field trips around Manila to the embassies of various countries. I remember our visits to the embassies of Canada, Switzerland, and France, if I'm not mistaken. Those field trips were not only fun, but also highly informative for us kids. I also remember that one of Miss Kanoy's specialties was the conceptual method of teaching. And even though we didn't know what it was at that time, it was very effective in our learning process. Our second teacher was Miss Perez, who taught us arts and crafts, math, and science. She taught us how to make various objects using the fun technique of paper mache. I also remember during our fourth grade when Typhoon Yuling destroyed the mostly wooden building on campus, as well as the concept hut building. Only the two concrete buildings survived. Due to the resulting shortage of classrooms, the school started having three-shift days instead of the usual two. The first shift started as early as 6 a.m., and the third ended as late as 7 p.m. I also remember the strong 6.0 intensity earthquake that struck Manila around the same time, where an apartment building housing mostly Chinese residents crumbled down like a stack of pancakes. These were harrowing times for us young kids. Our fifth grade teacher was especially memorable, as our teacher advisor, Mrs. Caridad Velasquez, was a brilliant, exceptional teacher and motivator. I think that she was probably a Spanish woman, judging by her looks. She taught us English prosody, the patterns of stress and intonation in a language. She also helped us considerably expand our English vocabulary. Her English grammar lessons were simply unforgettable. She also introduced us to the world of English poetry. She was one of a kind, and I really liked her and her teaching very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Velasquez. We are so grateful to you. Our science teacher at the time was Mrs. Ferrer, who taught us basic biology and basic chemistry. I remember Mrs. Ferrer using a flame sterilized safety pin, or imperdible, to draw small amounts of blood from our fingers and then looking at them under the microscope. That was the first time I ever had a sight of the microscopic world, and I have been interested in it ever since. Mrs. Ferrer was also the one who took a bunch of us to the Manila Science High School in Ermita to take the entrance exam for the next school year, which at least four of us passed. All four of us enrolled at the Manila Science High School the following year. So for that alone, we are very grateful to Mrs. Ferrer. In sixth grade, we had Mrs. Palacio as our teacher advisor. As an English-speaking Visayan, I believe, Mrs. Palacio was a terrific English teacher. She showed us how to write an essay, storytelling, basic creative writing, and reading short stories in English. I remember going to her house in Grace Park, which was being renovated, one day after graduation. When Mrs. Palacio told her husband that I was the valedictorian of our class, her husband complimented me, telling me that I was not only intelligent, but good looking as well. Whether true or not, but hopefully true, I still remember those words to this day. Finally, I remember very well our barkada during those days. And in no particular order, Irma Salazar, our salutatorian, Socrates Rillion, Rico Ramos, Grace Zingapan, Lourdes Santa Maria, Susan Balmeo, Rosalina Roque, Elmarita de Vera, may she rest in peace, Antonio Cruz, Ramon David, Eduardo Gemba, Carlos Budhi, Roy Vanguardia, Romeo Villalon, Minerva Espinosa, Marilyn de la Cruz, Maria Teresa de Guzman, Sirio Cortez, Potenciano Isais, Consuelo Ilagan, Rio Blanca Perez, Marisa Palor, Noemi Lampano, Joseph Macay, may he rest in peace, Roy Vanguardia, Antonio Torres, may he rest in peace, Virgilio Tan, Nelson Rivero, and last but not least, Angel Torres. My apologies to those whose names I missed. It has been 50 years, so give me a break. It is thus very clear that we spent a great deal of our formative years at the FG Calderon Elementary School, and we all owe what we are today to this school. We all owe you a great debt of gratitude, dear FG Calderon Elementary School. We love you and we will never forget you, our very first alma mater. And I guess I'll end with that. Thank you all for your attention. It has been great reminiscing with you. A very pleasant rest of the evening to all at magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Pagpalain sana tayo ng may kapal. Bye-bye.